Thank you, Speaker. Speaker, I welcome the opportunity to make a contribution to the debate on the Biodiversity, Conservation and Local Land Services Legislation Amendment, Broom Bush and Blue Mallee Coppicing Bill 2025. More importantly, I want to speak in strong support of this bill, introduced by my colleague, the member for Cootamundra, Steph Cook. And I want to take a moment reflecting, and I want to thank the member for Coogee for her contribution. I want to thank the member for Bathurst for his contribution as well. And the point that I'd make here is this is what Parliament should be about, is we have the member for Cootamundra who brings to the House a challenge that her community is facing and has a solution here. And I hear the member for Coogee says, well, okay, we've got, from the government's perspective, a different solution, but we need to see action on it. And this is one of the points that I'll make. The member for Cootamundra is quite clear about this. This bill's not a permanent fix, and it was never sought to be in that regard. What it is, though, is that it is a temporary solution to a problem, a temporary, sensible measure with a clear sunset clause that ensures farming families can go about their work, go about their livelihood, that biodiversity is protected, and that government departments have the time to complete their reviews properly. And this is the point. This is a community that is severely impacted in regional New South Wales. For those that aren't aware about where we are talking about coppicing of trees that have been planted specifically for this purpose generations ago. So it's referring to Blue Mallee and also to Broom Bush. Broom Bush that you will see for a highly renewable source of fencing product, and Blue Mallee that is used for eucalyptus oil. And it is an entirely sustainable process where you harvest these trees, you allow them to regrow, and then you harvest them again. And it is something that in these communities has been going on for more than a century, of stands that have been deliberately, intentionally planted to allow this sustainable practice to occur. And you can imagine or you can anticipate the products that come from these lands. As I said, eucalyptus oil found in healthcare products, natural cleaning items, the broom bush fencing that serves as an alternative to steel and timber. This is proof of how regional industries contribute to the broader economy and demonstrate sustainability at its finest. These families are not only preserving a proud heritage, they are also showing us how agriculture and conservation can work together. And this bill provides a much needed pathway forward for families in the Bland Shire, round West Wyalong and Talimba, and whose livelihoods depend on this coppicing program. These are families that have practiced it, as I've said, for centuries, some since the early 1900s. It's Australian, it's locally sourced, and it's entirely sustainable. Despite the environmental benefits and the deep roots in the region's history, coppicing has come under threat. And as the member for Coogee has said, this is something that predates this current government. We acknowledge that. What we're doing is identifying an issue and seeking to respond to it. In 2010, the Scientific Committee listed Mallee and Mallee broom bush dominated woodland in the southwestern slopes as a critically endangered ecological community. That listing and subsequent mapping saw private plantation, so it was not just plants that were endemic in terms of that they were part of the natural growth. Plants that had been deliberately planted were all of a sudden deemed critically endangered, and where coppicing had taken place sustainably for decades was reclassified as Category 2 regulated land. And this has had devastating consequences. We've heard reported in the ABC and other outlets, families in West Wyalong received notices last year alleging unauthorised clearing of native vegetation. So this practice that they were been doing for generations on plantations that their families had planted was alleged, as the member for Murray has said, was alleged then to be unauthorised clearing of native vegetation. These were families who had simply continued the same sustainable practices that generations before them had undertaken, and suddenly they were treated as though they were environmental offenders. The reality, as the member for Murray just said, is that coppicing is not land clearing. And yet, because of this misclassification, farmers have gone more than a year without income. Their businesses have ground to a halt. Their mental health has suffered. And the community fabric of towns like West Wyalong and Toowoomba, already tight-knit and resilient, that's been stretched to a breaking point. And there is another unintended consequence of this misstep. In the absence of coppicing, strangle vine, which is a parasitic native plant, has been allowed to spread unchecked over these plants. It smothers blue mallee, draining of its nutrients until the plant dies. Entire stands of native vegetation are being wiped out because of the situation we find ourselves in, taking with them the habitats of countless native species. Previously, coppicing helped keep strangle vine under control, and now without it, the environment is worse off. This bill is carefully designed to address the situation. It allows farmers to return to work, and it allows strangle vine to be properly managed. Importantly, it does so with strong safeguards. And the amendments to the bill provide reassurance. The exemption period is reduced from 2 years to 6 months, with the Minister able to extend it if further increments if necessary. Coppicing is limited only to areas that have been harvested since 1990, with mandatory certification from local land services. Coppicing can only be done by hand, as it has always been, ensuring the practice remains sustainable. And a drafting error in the Local Land Services Act is corrected. This is a balanced approach. It recognises that the government has asked its agencies and the Scientific Committee to review both the endangered ecological community listing and the vegetation mapping. That process is important and it must be done properly. But in the meantime, this Parliament cannot stand by while farming families go broke, while mental health suffers, and while strangle vine tears through the southwestern slopes. As I said, we respect the member for Coogie's contribution in talking about the need for the solution from the government.
She's a farmer.
She is a farmer. We accept, and this is the point that we continue to make. We acknowledge, as I said, that it's not a permanent fix, but it is a sensible temporary measure that allows the government departments to have the time to complete their work appropriately. I want to commend the member for Cootamundra for her advocacy. And I want to thank and commend the families who have been here to visit Parliament. I want to acknowledge their perseverance and the way they presented their case. They are good people who have carried on one of the most sustainable farming practices in our state. And their work deserves recognition, not punishment. This Parliament has an opportunity to correct an injustice, support regional communities, and uphold environmental integrity. And I strongly urge all members to support this bill.